Hi everyone, it's me, Ella, and welcome back to another episode of Surprise London Trip. Just recently, I went on a surprise trip to London and saw 4 shows. I wanted to vlog each show individually, however, I didn't get a chance as it was a surprise trip after all. On the last episode, we covered show number 1, the first show that I saw on my trip, which was Phantom of the Opera. I would just like to open this video by saying that I really enjoyed Phantom and would love to make a return trip to the show in the future. So, now, are you all ready to find out what the second show was that I saw on my trip? Show number 2 was Hamilton. Yes, so the second show that I saw on my surprise trip was Hamilton. This t-shirt with the Schuyler sisters on was actually one that I bought at the show. I had been looking at this t-shirt for a while and decided to buy it while I was there. You will be able to find out what other merch I bought from the show later on at the end of the video. But right now, let's jump into Surprise London Trip, Episode 2, Hamilton. So how was the news of show number 2 broken to me? Well, we went down for breakfast in the hotel that we'd stayed in the first night, came back up to the room, loaded the suitcases, bags and all that business, checked out of the first hotel, and we then moved to another hotel because we had somewhere else booked. I will not disclose where that is, as you will find out in episode 3. However, we moved to hotel number 2, and when we arrived at our second hotel, we had some drinks and some snacks on arrival, and it wasn't until after we'd finished our drinks and snacks that the news of show number 2 was broken to me, and at that moment I found out that show number 2 was Hamilton. And the surprises don't stop there, because little did I know that later in the day I would have a surprise guest come and join me. Once we'd had our arrival drinks and snacks, we then headed up to the room as there was another surprise waiting for me there. So all our stuff was brought up to us in the room, and once we'd put everything in its place, suitcases, bags and all that business for the next 2 nights, I was then given another surprise. It was an Eliza costume for me to wear to the show, which, as you can see in the mirror, is hanging up just behind me over here. However, it is facing the wrong way. It is back to front, so let's not talk about that. Anyway, it was then time for me to change into something a little bit more fancy, as I was going to have afternoon tea at the hotel, and it was in the afternoon tea area where I met my surprise guest. Once we'd checked into the afternoon tea area and found our table, there sitting waiting for us was my good friend Jack, and it was at that moment when I was told that he would be coming with me to see Hamilton dressed as King George III, and I would be wearing my Eliza costume. I was absolutely delighted at this, and we had our afternoon tea together, which was lovely, and then we went straight back up to the room to get our costumes on and get ready to leave to head to the Victoria Palace Theatre for the show that evening. Now, what was actually rather interesting was that over our afternoon tea, I unknowingly was in for another surprise because Jack actually told me that Joel Montague would play his last performance as King George that evening. Now, I didn't know anything about this at all. I didn't know that Joel was due to finish Hamilton on the day that we were going, so that was a lovely surprise to be able to see him at his last performance. However, I did know before coming on this surprise trip that after Hamilton, Joel would go on to be in Great Gatsby at the London Coliseum, which by the time this is out, I believe will already be open. So yes, it was a wonderful surprise to be able to see Joel at his last performance as King George. Okay, so my thoughts on Hamilton then. The show was absolutely fantastic, and the first thing I want to mention is how the history of the show is told through the songs. This was certainly very clever in the way that it was done and is something that definitely remained consistent throughout the performance. Lin-Manuel Miranda, in my opinion, has done a brilliant job of integrating history into the lyrics of the songs, and I believe this is part of what makes Hamilton so unique. Also, the storyline of Hamilton, for me personally, was relatively easy to follow along with and understand, which, as a first-time visitor, I'm going to be honest, is something that I was not expecting from this show at all. However, as I've just said, the history of the show is all there within the song lyrics, and I believe this is something that really helped me to make sense of what was happening on stage. So the next thing I want to talk about is the costumes. So there are many amazing costumes in Hamilton. However, there is one group of costumes that as a collective ultimately left me breathtaking, and that group of costumes belonged to the Schuyler sisters. Those dresses are gorgeous. I just adored them. And the moment the three sisters walked out on stage to perform their first number, the Schuyler sisters, I ultimately was left absolutely starstruck by their dresses and also their wonderful performances. To be able to witness the Schuyler sisters live on stage in front of my very eyes, wearing my very own Eliza Schuyler sisters costume, really made me feel like I was part of the number, and that is something I will never forget and always appreciate as a theatre goer, as I feel that something like that really enhanced my theatre going experience. And finally, I would like to round us off by saying that it was a privilege to be able to witness Joel Montague's final performance as King George III. Obviously, I said at the beginning of this video that I had absolutely no idea whatsoever that Joel was due to be finishing Hamilton on the day that we went, until Jack told me over our afternoon tea before the show. So it was a wonderful surprise and a real privilege to be there. The whole cast at Hamilton are incredible. I really enjoyed the show, and I would love to come back and see it again at some point. And with that, we have made it to the end of episode 2, which means it is time for the Hamilton merch haul. So obviously at the beginning of this video I showed you my Schuyler Sisters t-shirt, which I am wearing. Alongside that I bought this matching Schuyler Sisters pin badge. As you can see, it features the 3 Schuyler sisters all in their signature colours, so green for Eliza, pink for Angelica and yellow for Peggy. This was another thing that that I was absolutely desperate for, so I obviously went and bought it, and I cannot tell you just how happy I am to have this beautiful, beautiful Schuyler Sisters pin. I cannot wait to see where it eventually ends up. Now, Hamilton is a show that does both a programme and a brochure, so I obviously went and bought them both. This is the programme, which contains all of the cast information and biographies. And this significantly bigger one is the brochure, which contains all of the production images from the show featuring the cast. Now, I haven't even properly looked at this myself, but I am sure the production images will be absolutely stunning. I cannot wait to take a look inside. So that does it for all of the Hamilton purchases that I can show you. However, what I can tell you is that alongside my Schuyler Sisters t-shirt, my Schuyler Sisters pin badge, my programme and my brochure, I also bought a Hamilton poster, which I am not going to show you because A, it came in its own bag separate to the rest of the stuff, and B, it is absolutely massive. However, I cannot wait to eventually put it on my bedroom wall. And on that note, the second episode of Surprise London Trip comes to a close. Make sure to keep an eye out for which show I saw next. All I'll say is that I have been very excited to share this next one with you all, and I shall see you very soon. Bye!